हाय फ्रेंड्स, वेलकम बैक टू माय यूट्यूब चैनल। आज की इस वीडियो से जो है हम क्लास 11 की यूनिट 1 का चैप्टर करने वाले हैं। लास्ट वीडियो में हमने यूनिट 1 का चैप्टर 1 किया था। आज हम चैप्टर 2 से स्टार्ट क्लासिफिकेशन। ओके, तो स्टार्ट करते हैं। सिंस द डॉन ऑफ द सिविलाइजेशन देयर हैव बीन मैनी अटेम्प्ट्स टू क्लासिफाई लिविंग ऑर्गेनिज्म. It was done instinctively, not using criteria that were scientific but born out of a need to use organism for our own use, for food, shelter, and clothing. Aristotle was the earliest to attempt a more scientific basis for classification. He used simple morphological characters to classify plants into trees, shrubs, and herbs. He also divided animals into two groups, those which had red blood and those that did not. In Linnaeus' time, a two-kingdom system of classification with Plantae and Animalia kingdom were developed that include all plants and animals respectively. This system did not distinguish between the eukaryotes and the prokaryotes, unicellular and multicellular organisms, and photosynthetic green algae and the non-photosynthetic blue fungi organism. Classification of organisms into plants and animals were easily done and was easy to understand, but a large number of organisms did not fall into either category. Hence, the two kingdom classification used for the long time was found inadequate. Besides gross morphology, a need was also felt for including other characteristics like cell structure, nature of wall, mode of nutrition, habitat, methods of reproduction, evolutionary relationships, etc. Classification system for the living organisms have hence undergone several changes over the time. Though plant and animal kingdom have been a constant under all different systems, these understanding of the groups or organism included under these kingdoms have been changing. The number and the nature of a kingdoms have also been understood differently by different scientists over the time. Characteristics of the five kingdom classification. Characters and the five kingdoms. There are five kingdoms. First one is Monera, second is Protista, third is Fungi, fourth is Plantae, and fifth is Animalia. We will discuss the characters and the group. Okay, so first one is the Monera. In Monera, cell type is prokaryotic. Cell wall is non-cellulosic polysaccharide plus amino acid. Nuclear membrane is also present. Body organization is tissue or organ level, and the mode of nutrition is autotrophic photosynthetic. In Animalia, the cell type is eukaryotic. Cell wall is absent. Nuclear membrane is present. Body organization is tissue or organ system level. Mode of nutrition is heterotrophic, holozoic, or saprophytic in nature. Okay. R.H. Whittaker in 1969 proposed a five kingdom classification. The kingdoms defined by him were named as Monera, Protista, Fungi, Plantae, and Animalia. The main criteria for classification used by him include cell structure, body organization, mode of nutrition, reproduction, and phylogenetic relationships. Table 2.1 gives a comparative account of different characteristics of the five kingdoms. The three domain system has also been proposed that divide the kingdom Monera into two domains, leaving the remaining eukaryotic kingdom in the third domain and thereby a sixth domain kingdom classification. You will learn about this system in detail at higher classes. Let us look at this five kingdom classification to understand the issues and considerations that influence the classification system. Earlier classification system included bacteria, blue-green algae, fungi, mosses, ferns, and gymnosperms, and the angiosperm under plants. The characters that unified this whole kingdom was that all organisms included had a cell wall in their cells. This placed together group which widely differed in other characteristics. It brought together the prokaryotic bacteria and the blue-green algae cyanobacteria with other groups which were eukaryotic. It grouped together the unicellular organism and the multicellular ones, say, for example, Chlamydomonas and Spirogyra were placed together under algae. The classification did not differentiate the heterotrophic group fungi and the autotrophic green plants, though they also showed a characteristic difference in their wall composition. The fungi had chitin in their walls, while the green plants had a cellulosic cell wall. When such characteristics were considered, the fungi were placed in a separate kingdom, kingdom fungi. All prokaryotic organisms were grouped together under kingdom Monera, and the unicellular eukaryotic organisms were placed together in the kingdom Protista. Kingdom Protista had brought together Chlamydomonas, chlorella, early placed in algae with plants and both having cell walls, with paramecium and amoeba, which were earlier placed in the animal kingdom, okay, which lack cell wall. It has put together organisms in which the earlier classification were placed in different kingdoms. This happened because the criteria for classification has been changed. This kind of a changes will take place in future too, depending on the improvement in our understanding of characteristics and evolutionary relationship. Over time, an attempt has been made to evolve a classification system which reflects not only the morphological, physiological, and reproductive similarities but is also phylogenetic, that is based on evolutionary similarities. In this chapter, we will study the characteristics of kingdom Monera, Protista, and fungi of the Whittaker system of classification. The kingdoms Plantae and Animalia, commonly referred to as plant and animal kingdom, respectively, will be dealt separately in chapter 3 and 4. Okay. किंगडम मोनेरा से हम स्टार्ट करने वाले हैं. मोनेरा, प्रोटिस्टा, फंजाई हम तीनों पढ़ेंगे. मोनेरा के अंदर जो 4 टाइप्स के हैं, फंगाई के अंदर जितने टाइप्स है, प्लस प्रोटिस्टा के अंदर जितने टाइप्स है वो सभी पढ़ेंगे. प्लांट एंड एनिमल किंगडम हम 3rd and 4th चैप्टर में पढ़ेंगे. ओके, चलिए स्टार्ट करते हैं किंगडम मोनेरा के साथ. किंगडम मोनेरा, बैक्टीरिया आर द सोल मेंबर्स ऑफ द किंगडम मोनेरा. मेनली जो किंगडम मोनेरा है उसके अंदर बैक्टीरियाज हम पढ़ते हैं. They are the most abundant microorganism. Bacteria occur almost everywhere. Hundreds of bacteria are present in a handful of soil. They also live in extreme habitats such as hot spring, desert, snow, and deep oceans where very few other life forms can survive. Many of them live in or on the other organism as parasite. Bacteria are grouped under 4 categories based on their shape: the spherical coccus cocci, the rod-shaped bacillus bacilli, and the comma-shaped Vibrium vibrio, and the spiral-shaped Spirillum spirilla. Okay, though the bacterial structure is very simple, they are very complex in behavior. Compared to many other organisms, bacteria as a group show the most extensive metabolic diversity. Some of the bacteria are autotrophic, that is, they synthesize their own food from inorganic substrates. They may be photosynthetic autotrophic or chemosynthetic autotrophic. The vast majority of bacteria are heterotrophs, that is, they depend on other organisms or on dead organic matter for फूड. आर्की बैक्टीरिया, अब बैक्टीरिया में भी हम जब मोनेरा में 2 टाइप्स पढ़ेंगे, एक है आर्की बैक्टीरिया और एक है यू बैक्टीरिया. ओके, इनके बाद हम किंगडम प्रोटिस्टा पे आ जाएंगे. देखिए, आर्की बैक्टीरिया को हम प्रिमिटिव बैक्टीरिया भी कहते हैं, मतलब ये ट्रू बैक्टीरिया नहीं होते, या बहुत पुराने बैक्टीरिया टाइप. ओके, आर्की बैक्टीरिया, these bacteria are special since they live in some of the most harsh habitats such as extreme salty areas which are halophiles, and hot spring thermoacidophilies, and marshy areas methanogens. Archaebacteria differ from other bacteria in having a different cell wall structure, and this feature is responsible for their survival in extreme conditions. Methanogens are present in the gut of these several ruminant animals such as cows and buffaloes, and they are responsible for the production of methane biogas from the dung of these animals. ओके, अब हम बात करेंगे यू बैक्टीरिया. यू बैक्टीरिया को हम ट्रू बैक्टीरिया भी कहते हैं. There are thousands of different eubacteria or a true bacteria. They are characterized by the presence of a rigid cell wall and if motile, a flagellum. The cyanobacteria, also referred to as blue-green algae, have a chlorophyll A similar to green plants and are photosynthetic autotrophs. The cyanobacteria are unicellular, colonal or filamentous. Freshwater or marine or terrestrial algae. The colonies are generally surrounded by gelatinous sheath. They often form blooms in polluted water bodies. Some of these organisms can fix atmospheric nitrogen in a specialized cell called heterocyst. Example, nostoc and anabina. Chemosynthetic autotrophic bacteria oxidize various inorganic substances such as nitrates, nitrites, and ammonia and use the released energy for their ATP production. They also play a great role in recycling nutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus, iron, and sulfur. Heterotrophic bacteria are the most abundant in nature. They majority or are important decomposers. Many of them have a significant impact on human affairs. They are helpful in making curd from milk, production of antibodies, fixing nitrogen in legume roots, and some are pathogen causing damage to human beings, crops, farms, and pets. Cholera, typhoid, tetanus, citrus canker are well known diseases caused by different bacteria. अब कोलेरा, टाइफॉइड, टेटनस एंड सिट्रस कैंकर, ये 4 डिसीज के बारे में बताया गया जो कि मोस्टली एग्जाम में पूछी जाती है, तो आप इनको अच्छे से प्रिपेयर करके जाइएगा. Bacteria reproduce mainly by fission. Sometimes under unfavorable conditions they produce spores. They also reproduce by sort of a sexual reproduction by adopting a primitive type of DNA transfer from one bacterium to the other. The mycoplasma are the organisms that completely lack a cell wall. They are the smallest living cells and can survive without oxygen. Many mycoplasma are pathogenic in animals and plants. Kingdom Protista. All single-celled eukaryotics are placed under Protista, but the boundaries of this kingdom are not well defined. What may be a photosynthetic Protista to one biologist and maybe a plant to another? In this book, we include chrysophyte, dinoflagellates, euglenoids, slime moulds, and protozoa under Protista. Members of Protista are primarily aquatic. The kingdom forms a link with the other dealings with plants, animals, and fungi. Being eukaryotic, the Protista cell body contains a well-defined nucleus and other membrane-bound cell organelles. Some have flagella or cilia. Protista reproduce asexually and sexually by a process involving cell fusion and zygote formation. देखिए प्रोटिस्टा में हम मेनली 5 पार्ट्स पढ़ेंगे, क्राइसोफाइट, डाइनोफ्लैजिलेट्स, यूग्लिनोइड्स, स्लाइम माउल्ड एंड प्रोटोजोआ. ओके, ये हम 5 चीज़ें पढ़ने वाले, क्राइसोफाइट, डाइनोफ्लैजिलेट, यूग्लिनोइड, स्लाइम माउल्ड एंड प्रोटोजोआ. इसके अलावा कुछ नहीं है प्रोटिस्टा में. ओके, तो सबसे पहले क्राइसोफाइट से स्टार्ट करते हैं. क्राइसोफाइट ग्रुप इंक्लूड्स डाइएटम्स एंड गोल्डन algae dismides. They are found in fresh water as well as in marine environments. They are microscopic and float passively in water colorants, plankton. Most of them are photosynthetic. In diatoms, the cell walls forms 2 thin overlapping shells which fit together as in a soap box. The walls are embedded with silica and thus walls are indestructible. Thus, diatoms have left behind large amount of cell wall deposit in their habitat. This accumulation over billion of years is referred to as diatomaceous earth. Being gritty, this soil is used in polishing, filtration, and oils of syrups. Diatoms are the chief producers in the oceans. अब हम बात करेंगे डाइनोफ्लैजिलेट्स के बारे में. डाइनोफ्लैजिलेट्स, these organisms are mostly marine and photosynthetic. They appear yellow, green, brown, blue or red depending on the main pigment present in their cells. The cell wall has a stiff cellular plates on the other surface. Most of them have 2 flagella. One lies longitudinally and the other transversely in a furrow between the wall plates. Very often red dinoflagellate, example goniolax, undergo such rapid multiplication that they make the sea appear red, which is known as red tides. Toxins released by such large numbers may even kill other marine animals such as fishes. Okay, then we will talk about euglenoids, another type of protista. Majority of them are fresh water found in stagnant water. Instead of a cell wall, they have a protein rich layer called pellicle, which makes their body flexible. They have two flagella, a short and a long one. So they are photosynthetic in the presence of sunlight. When deprived of sunlight, they behave like heterotrophs by predating on other animals, other smaller organisms. Interestingly, the predating on other organisms, interestingly, the pigments of euglenoids are identical to those present in the higher plants. Example, euglena. Now we will talk about slime molds. Slime molds are saprophytic protistas. The body moves among decaying twigs and leaves, engulfing organic material. Under suitable conditions, they form an aggregation called plasmodium, which may grow and spread over several feet. During unfavorable conditions, the plasmodium differentiates and form fruiting bodies bearing spores at their tips. The spores possess true walls. They are extremely resistant and survive for many years, even under adverse conditions. The spores are dispersed by air currents. Protozoa. All protozoa are heterotrophs and live as a predator or parasites. They are believed to be primitive relative of animals. These are four major groups. There are four major groups of protozoa: amoeboid protozoa, ciliated protozoa, फ्लैजिलेटेड प्रोटोजोआ एंड स्पोरोजोआ. प्रोटोजोआ जो है वो लास्ट पार्ट है प्रोटिस्टा का, जिसमें कि हम चार पार्ट्स में डिवाइड करते हैं: अमीबॉइड प्रोटोजोआ, फ्लैजिलेटेड प्रोटोजोआ, सिलेटेड प्रोटोजोआ एंड फ्लैजिलेटेड एंड स्पोरोजोआ. ओके, चलिए स्टार्ट करते हैं. Amoeboid protozoa. Amoeboid protozoa, these organisms lives in a fresh water, sea water or moist soil. They move and capture their prey by putting out pseudopodia as in amoeba. Marine forms have silica shells on their surface. Some of them, such as entamoeba, are parasite. Flagellated protozoa. These members of this group are either free living or parasitic. They have flagella. The parasitic form cause disease such as sleeping sickness. Example, trypanosoa. Okay, ciliated protozoa. These are aquatic, actively moving organism because of the presence of thousand cilia. They have a cavity gullet that opens to the outside of the cell surface. The coordinated movement of the rows of cilia cause the water laden into the food to be stirred into the gullet. For example, paramecium. Sporozoa. अब हम बात करने वाले स्पोरोजोआ के बारे में. Sporozoa, these include diverse organisms that have an infectious spore-like stage in their life cycle. The most notorious is Plasmodium, malarial parasite, which causes malaria, a disease which has a staggering effect on human population. Kingdom fungi. The fungi constitute a unique kingdom of heterotrophic organisms. They show a great diversity in morphology and habitat. You must have seen fungi on moist bread and rotten fruits. The common mushroom you eat and toadstool are also fungi, while spores have seen on mustard leaves are due to the parasitic fungus. Some unicellular fungi, example yeast, are used to make bread and beer. Other fungi cause disease in plants and animals. Wheat rust, called punica, is an important example. Some of the source are antibodies, example penicillin. Fungi are cosmopolitan and occur in air, water and soil and animals and plants. They prefer to grow in warm and humid places. Have you ever wondered why we keep food in the refrigerator? Yes, it is to prevent the food from going bad due to the bacterial or fungal infections. With the exceptions of yeast, which are unicellular, fungi are filamentous. Their body consists of a long cylinder thread-like structure called hyphae. The network of hyphae is known as mycelium. Some hyphae are continuous tubes filled with multinucleated cytoplasm. These are called cenocytic hyphae. Others have a septae or a cross wall in their hyphae. The walls of a fungi are composed of a chitin and a polysaccharide. Most fungi are heterotrophic and absorb soluble organic material from their substrate and hence are called saprophytes. Those that depend on living plants and animals are called parasites. They can also live as symbionts in association with algae such as lichens with roots of higher plants as mycorrhiza. Reproduction in fungi can take place by vegetative means, fragmentation, fission, and budding. Asexual reproduction is by spores, called conidia is or sporangium or zoospore. The sexual reproduction is by oospores, ascospores, and basidospores. The various spores are produced in distinct structure called fruiting bodies. The sexual cycle involves the following three steps. अब यहाँ पे जो है हमें सेक्सुअल साइकिल बताई गई है फंगाई की. First step है fusion of protoplasm between two motile and non-motile gametes called plasmogamy. Second step है fusion of two nuclei called geniogamy. Third step है meiosis in zygote resulting in haploid spores. Okay. When a fungus reproduces sexually, two haploid hyphae or a compatible mating types come together and fuse. In some fungi, the fusion of two haploid cells immediately results in a diploid cell 2n. However, in another fungi, Ascomycetes and Basidomycetes, an intervening dikaryotic stage, that is n plus n, that is 2 nuclei per cell, occurs. Such a condition is called dikaryon and the phase is called dikaryo phase of fungus. Later, the parental nuclei fuse and the cells become diploid. The fungi form floating bodies in which reduction division occur, leading to the formation of haploid spore. The morphology of mycelium, mode of spore formation, and floating bodies form the basis of the division of the kingdom into वेरियस क्लासेस. अब हम यहाँ पे डिफरेंट टाइप ऑफ फंगाई पढ़ेंगे, फाइकोमाइसिटीज, एस्कोमाइसिटीज एंड बेसिडोमाइसिटीज, ड्यूट्रोमाइसिटीज. और ये चार टाइप की फंगाई है जो हमें रीड आउट करनी है. फर्स्ट वन पे आ जाते हैं फाइकोमाइसिटीज. मेंबर्स ऑफ फाइकोमाइसिटीज आर फाउंड इन एक्वेटिक हैबिटेट्स एंड ऑन डिकेइंग wood in moist and damp places or as an obligate parasite on plants. The mycelium is aseptate and cenocytic. Asexual reproduction takes place by spores are endogenously produced in sporangium. A zygospore is formed by a fusion of two gametes. These gametes are similar in morphology, isogamous, or dissimilar, anisogamous or oogamous. Some common examples are Mucker, Rhizopus, the bread mold mentioned earlier in an albugo, the parasitic fungi on mustard. Okay. Ascomycetes. Ascomycetes, commonly known as sac fungi. The ascomycetes are mostly multicellular, example penicillium, or rarely unicellular, example yeast, Saccharomyces. They are saprophytic decomposers, parasitic and coprophilous, growing on dung. Mycelium is branched and septate. The asexual spores are conidia produced exogenously on the spatial mycelium called conidopores. Conidia on germination produce mycelium. Sexual spores are called ascospores, which are produced endogenously in a sac-like asci, singular ascus. These asci are arranged in different types of floating bodies called ascocarps. Some examples are Aspergillus, Calviceps, and Neurospora. Neurospora is used extensively in biochemical and genetic work. Many members like morels and truffles are edible and are considered deciduous. Basidomycetes. Basidomycetes, commonly known as the basidomycetes, are mushrooms, bracket fungi, or puffballs. They grow in soil, on logs and tree stumps, and in living plant bodies as parasites. Example: rust and smuts. The mycelium is branched and septate. The asexual spores are generally not found, but vegetative reproduction by fragmentation is common. The sex organs are absent, but plasmogamy is brought about by a fusion of two vegetative or somatic cells of different strains or genotypes. The resultant structure is dikaryotic, which ultimately gives rise to basidium. Karyogamy and meiosis take place in the basidium, producing 4 basidospores. The basidospores are exogenously produced on the basidia. The basidia are arranged in fruiting body called basidocarps. Some common members are agaricus mushroom, Eustilagosmut, and Ficuna rust fungus. Deuteromycetes. Deuteromycetes are commonly known as the imperfect fungi because only the asexual vegetative phase of this fungi are known. When the sexual form of these fungi were discovered, they were moved into classes they rightly belong to. It is also possible that the asexual and vegetative stage have been given one name and placed under Deuteromycetes, and the sexual stage and the sexual stage another and placed another class. Later, when the linkages were established, the fungi were correctly identified and moved out of Deuteromycetes. Once perfect sexual stages of members of Deuteromycetes were discovered, they were often moved to Ascomycetes and Basidomycetes. The Deuteromycetes reproductive only by asexual spores known as conidia. The mycelium is septate and branched. Some members are saprophytes or parasites, while a large number of them are decomposers of litters and help in mineral cycling. Some examples are Alternaria, Collectorium, and Trichoderma. Next is kingdom Plantae and kingdom Animalia. Here in kingdom Plantae and kingdom Animalia, we just have a brief introduction part. Okay, in chapter 3 and 4 we will discuss it briefly. Okay, in explaining way we will discuss in chapter 3 and 4, but here is a brief introduction is given. Let us read that. Kingdom Plantae. Kingdom Plantae include all eukaryotic chlorophyll containing organisms commonly called plants. A few members are partially heterotrophic, such as the insectivorous plants or parasite. Bladderwort and mineral splattrap are example of insectivorous plants, and Cuscuta is a parasite. The plant cells have an eukaryotic structure with prominent chloroplast and the cell wall mainly made of cellulose. You will study the eukaryotic cell structure in chapter 8 in detail. Plantae includes algae, bryophyte, pteridophyte, gymnosperm, and angiosperm. Life cycle of a plant has two distinct phases: the diploid sporophytic and the haploid gametophytic. The alternative with each other. The lengths of the haploid and the diploid phases and whether these phases are free living or dependent on other vary among different groups in plant. This phenomena is called alternation of generation. You will study further details of this kingdom in chapter 3. Kingdom Animalia. The kingdom is characterized by the heterotrophic eukaryotic organisms that are multicellular and their cell lack cell walls. They directly or indirectly depend on our plants for food. They digest their food in an internal cavity and store food reserves as glycogen or fat. Their mode of nutrition is holozoic. By ingestion of food, they follow a definite growth pattern and grow into adults that have a definite shape and size. Higher forms show elaborate sensory and a neuromotor mechanism. Most of them are capable of locomotion. The sexual reproduction is by copulation of male and female followed by embryological development. Salient features of various phyla are described in chapter 4. Viruses, viroid, and prions and lichens. In the 5 kingdom of classification of Whitaker, there is no mention of lichens and some acellular organisms like virus, viroids, and prions. These are briefly introduced here. All of us who have suffered the ill effects of common cold flu, known what effect viruses can have on us. Even if we don't associate it with our condition, viruses did not find a place in classification since they are not considered truly living. If we understand living as those organisms that have a cell structure, the viruses are non-cellular organisms that are characterized by having an inert crystalline structure outside the living cell. Once they infect a cell, they attack over the machinery of the host cell to replicate themselves, killing the host. Would you call a virus living or not living? Viruses mean venom or poisonous fluid. Dmitry Van Bosky in 1892 recognized certain microbes as casual organisms of the mosaic disease of tobacco. These were found to be smaller than the bacteria because they pass through the bacteria-proof filters. M.W. Badger Nick in 1898 demonstrated that the extract of the infected plants of tobacco could cause infection in healthy plants and named the new pathogen virus and called the fluid as contagium vivum fluid, infectious living fluid. W.M. Stanley in 1935 showed that viruses could be crystallized and crystals consist largely of proteins. They are inert outside their specific host cell. Viruses are obligate parasite. In addition to protist proteins, viruses also contain genetic material that could be either RNA or DNA. Viruses contain both RNA and DNA. A virus is a nucleoprotein and the genetic material is infectious. In general, viruses that infect plants have a single stranded RNA, and the viruses that infect animals have either single or a double stranded RNA or a double stranded DNA. Bacterial viruses or bacteriophagic phages, viruses that infect the bacteria, are usually double-stranded DNA viruses. The protein coat called capsid is made of a small subunit called capsomers. Protects the nucleic acid. These capsomers are arranged in helical or polyhedral geometric forms. Viruses cause diseases like mumps, smallpox, herpes, and influenza. AIDS in human is also caused by a virus. In plants, the symptoms can be mosaic formation, leaf rolling and curling, yellowing and vein clearing, dwarfing, and stunted growth. Viruses. In 1971, T. O'Diner discovered a new infectious agent that was smaller than virus and caused potato spindle tuber disease. It was found to be a free RNA. It lacked the protein code that is found in viruses, hence the name viroid. The RNA of the viroid was of low molecular weight. Prions. In the modern medicine, certain infectious neurological diseases were found to be transmitted by an agent consisting of an abnormally folded protein. The agent was similar in size to viruses. These agents were called prions. The most notable disease caused by a prion are the bovine spongiform encephalopathy (BSE), commonly called as mad cow disease in cattle, and it is analogous variant of CR-Jacob disease (CJD) in humans. Lichens. Lichens are symbiotic associations, that is mutually useful associations between algae and fungi. The algal component is known as phycocopiant and the fungal component is known as mycocopiant, which are autotrophic and heterotrophic respectively. Algae prepare food for the fungi and the fungi provide shelter and absorb mineral nutrients and water for its partner. So close is the association, that is, if one saw a lichen in nature, one would never imagine that they had two different organisms within them. Lichens are very good pollution indicators as they do not grow in polluted areas. बायोलॉजिकल, अब हम समरी देख लेते हैं इसकी. बायोलॉजिकल क्लासिफिकेशन ऑफ अ प्लांट्स एंड एनिमल्स वाज फर्स्ट proposed by Aristotle on the basis of simple morphological characters. Linnaeus later classified all living organisms into two kingdoms, Plantae and Animalia. Whitaker proposed an elaborate five kingdom classification, Monera, Protista, Fungi, Plantae, and Animalia. The main criteria of the five kingdom classification were cell structure, body organization, mode of nutrition and reproduction, and phylogenetic relationship. In the five kingdom classification, bacteria are included in the kingdom Monera. Bacteria are cosmopolitan in distribution. These organisms show the most extensive metabolic diversity. Bacteria may be autotrophic or heterotrophic in their mode of nutrition. Kingdom Protista includes all single-celled eukaryotes such as chrysophyte, dinoflagellate, euglenoids, slime molds, and protozoa. Protists have defined nucleus and the membrane-bound organelles. They produce both asexually and sexually. Members of the kingdom Fungi show a great diversity in structure and habitat. Most fungi are saprophytic in their mode of nutrition. They show asexual and sexual reproduction. Phycomycetes, Ascomycetes, Basidomycetes, Tritomycetes are the four classes under this kingdom. The Plantae includes all eukaryotic chlorophyll containing organisms. Algae, bryophyte, pteridophyte, gymnosperm, and angiosperms are included in this group. The life cycle of a plant exhibit alternation of generation, gametophytic and saprophytic generations. The heterotrophic eukaryotic multicellular nutrition of these organisms is holozoic. They reproduce mostly by the asexual mode. Some acellular organisms like viruses, viroids, as well as the lichens are not included in the five kingdoms सिस्टम ऑफ क्लासिफिकेशन. ओके फ्रेंड्स, तो यहाँ पे ये चैप्टर कंप्लीट हो गया. आई होप कि आपको सभी को वीडियो अच्छी लगी होगी. अगर आपको वीडियो अच्छी लगी तो प्लीज़ चैनल को लाइक और सब्सक्राइब ज़रूर कर दीजिएगा. थैंक यू सो मच फॉर वॉचिंग.